Hi guys, it's Graham again and welcome back to my channel. Today is part one of a two-part series I'm going to do on my channel, and it comes from watching a video by Eric over at The Lonesome Reader, who recently did a video where he spoke about a lithub.com article written by Emily Temple, and it's the 50 best contemporary novels under 200 pages. And it got me thinking about books that I love that are maybe not so contemporary but are under 200 pages or thereabouts. So yeah, part one of the video series will have 5 books and part 2 will have the other 5 books. So let's get started. The first book that this comes in at 99 pages. It is the Victorian Chaise-Longue by Marganita Laski. Obviously this is a Persephone edition. I may do a video on my Persephone collection because I have lots. I have about 50, and I think at the time of filming Persephone currently have 135 titles in their catalogue. This tells the story of Melanie, who has recovered or is recovering from, I think it's tuberculosis. It's a while since I've read this, so I might not be 100% correct. She and her husband, obviously they've recently married. She and he have been shopping for antiques to fill their new marital home, which a lot of people do. I know that my husband and I do quite often. And it's a fun thing to do. Anyway, she buys this Victorian Chaise-Longue, and one day she's walking about the house, she sits down, she falls asleep, and when she wakens up, she is in another body and in a completely different time to the one that she's currently in when she buys the Chaise-Longue. The person that she is now, or is in the body of, has the same disease that she is recovering from, but obviously back in time it was more of a lethal disease. It could kill you. It can still kill you, I think, now, tuberculosis, I'm fairly certain, but I think there are inoculations and stuff like that. I don't know, I'm not a doctor, but yeah, so this is really good. She wakes up, she knows that she's in the wrong time, in the wrong body, and she's trying to convince the other person that's in the room with her as the other person who's on the Chaise-Longue, if that makes sense. But they believe that she's just delirious because of the illness. The illness is clouding her mind, and it's for that reason it's quite scary that you know you're in the wrong place. And in the wrong time, in the wrong body. That would be a terrifying experience. But yeah, if that's your kind of thing, the Victorian Chaise-Longue by Marganita Laski. It's very good. It's a psychological thriller, and you will read this within a few hours. This is a one-sitting book. It's tiny. It's 99 pages long, and you can't go wrong with it. It's really good. The next book I read just recently, and I really enjoyed this. This comes in at about 132 pages. Yeah, it is Elevation by Stephen King. This tells the story of a man called Scott Carey who discovers that he is losing weight at a rate of knots very quickly, but outwardly his body is remaining the same. It looks as though he's bordering on overweight. He's a very large man. And yeah, it's the story of how he begins to weigh nothing and starts to float away. Oh, it's weird, but it's brilliant. I'll read you the back of this one. In the small town of Castle Rock, word gets around quickly. That's why Scott Carey only confides in his friend Dr. Bob Ellis about his strange condition. Every day he's losing weight, but without looking any different. Meanwhile, a new couple, Deirdre and Missy, owners of a fine dining experience in town, have moved in next door. Scott is not happy that their dogs keep fouling on his lawn. But as the town prepares for its annual Thanksgiving 12k run, Scott starts to understand the prejudices his neighbours face. Soon they forge a friendship, which may just help him through his mysterious affliction. And they do, they form a really deep friendship, and it's kind of heartbreaking at the end because, spoiler, he loses so much weight that he becomes weightless and floats away. and they let him go. He floats on up into the sky and goes away, and they don't see him again. But it's good. So 132 pages of Stephen King. It's brilliant. If you've not read it, give it a go. So the third book in my my choice of 10 books under 200 pages. This one comes in at 143 pages. This is one of my prized possessions. This is a first edition and I absolutely love it. It is My Story by Marilyn Monroe. So basically this is just Marilyn Monroe's autobiography. It tells the story of from her young years in care homes to when she becomes a global movie superstar and a sex symbol for men and women throughout the globe. It's surprisingly well written. Marilyn Monroe was no dumb blonde. That was the persona that she played. She certainly was not that. She's a very astute, very clever, very, very witty woman. I shall read you the inside. My Story, Marilyn Monroe. Only a few people close to Marilyn Monroe knew that at a critical point in her life, she decided to tell her story. Beset by the fabrications of gossips and press agents, stung by the thousands of words written by others, she began work on her autobiography. She gave the manuscript to her friend, confidant, and business partner, Milton Green. Mr. Green and the executors of Miss Monroe's estate have agreed that the time has now come for us all to hear what Marilyn herself had to say. Please see back flap. There's nothing on the back flap, so that's all that it says. So basically, yeah, she wrote this before she died. It wasn't published until afterwards, and it tells the story of Marilyn Monroe's life, from lonely young women, Norma Jean Baker, right through to global superstar Marilyn Monroe. And it's a very good book. So number 3 in this video is a book that I absolutely adore. This is just so good. This writer, his writing is just superb, and the story is just awesome. It comes in at 124 pages. It is The Uncommon Reader by Alan Bennett. This writer, his writing is witty, it's dark, it's hilarious, it's to the point, it's just so well crafted. Every word on every page is so well thought through. This tells the story of the Queen, or at least a fictional version of the Queen. One day the corgis are playing up, they won't come back for her when she calls them, and she chases them around Buckingham Palace, and they're in the courtyard outside, and they jump onto a van, which turns out to be a mobile library. The Queen follows them, and she starts a love affair with the written word, and then forgets her constitutional duties and becomes a voracious reader. It's just awesome. It's absolutely brilliant. Had the dogs not taken exception to the strange van parked in the royal grounds, the Queen might never have learnt of the Westminster Travelling Library's weekly visits to the palace. But finding herself at its steps, she goes up to apologise for all the yapping and ends up taking out a novel by Ivy Compton Burnett, last borrowed in 1989. Duff read though it proves to be, upbringing demands she finish it, and so as not to appear rude, she withdraws another. This second, more fortunate choice of book awakens in Her Majesty a passion for reading so great that her public duties begin to suffer, and so she devours work by everyone from Hardy to Bruckner to Proust to Samuel Beckett. Her equerries conspire to bring the Queen's literary odyssey to a close. Subversive and hugely enjoyable, The Uncommon Reader offers the perfect argument for reading, written by one of its great champions, Alan Bennett. it is an absolutely incredible book. It's so funny. It's so well written, and you won't regret it if you pick it up. And I recommend that you do. So the fifth book in this video is a book by easily one of my favourite contemporary authors. His writing is just beautiful and I love it. It's On Chesil Beach by Ian McEwan. This tells the story of a young married couple in the 1960s. They're both virgins, at least the girl is, and they are worried about what is expected of them on their wedding night. And it turns out that the woman is, well, there isn't a word for it in the 60s, I don't believe, but she turns out to be asexual. She doesn't want him near her, and he, I can't remember what is going on with the guy. It's quite a while ago since I read this. It is July 1962. Edward and Florence, young innocents married that morning, arrive at a hotel on the Dorset coast. At dinner, in their rooms, they struggle to suppress their private fears of the wedding night to come. Put it this way, their marriage doesn't survive. They're married in July 1962, and that's when their marriage ends, because they're just not compatible. They've saved themselves for marriage. I think they do love one another quite deeply, but they just can't, or at least Florence can't be with Edward physically. She can't bring herself to do it. This is brilliant. It says on the front, wonderful, exquisite and devastating. It's all of those things and so much more. And I recommend that if you've not read it, you do. There's also a film based on this that I haven't seen yet, and I need to get around to that, because yeah, it's a great book, and I would imagine it would transfer well to screen. So that's the first 5 books in my top 10 of my favourite books under 200 pages. Oh, I realised I didn't tell you how many pages this one comes in at. So useless. 166 pages on Chesil Beach by Ian McEwan. So yes, that's my first 5 books in my top 10. I hope you've seen something there that you might fancy reading, because they are very good and I recommend them all. Tune in next time for my next 5. Whatever you're doing, I hope you have so much fun doing it. Whatever you're reading, I hope you love it. Stay fabulous, be amazing, be yourself, stay safe. And I'll see you again soon for another video. Bye bye. Had the dogs not taken exception to the strange van parked in the royal grounds, the Queen might never have learnt that the Westminster Travelling Library's weekly visit. I shall start that again. Had the Queen... I shall start again. Had the dogs not taken... So the 4th book is The Uncommon Reader by Alan Bennett. This is just brilliant. I shall read you the inside. Had the dogs not taken exception to the strange van parked in the royal grounds, the Queen might never have learnt of the Westminster Travelling Library's weekly visits to the palace. But finding herself at its steps, she goes up to apologise for all the yapping and ends up taking out a novel by Ivy Compton Burnett, last borrowed in 1989. Duff read through it. Had the dogs not taken exception to the strange van parked in the royal grounds, the Queen might never have learnt of the Westminster Travelling Library's weekly visits to the palace. But finding herself at its steps, She goes up to apologise for all the yapping and ends up taking out a novel by Ivy Compton Burnett, last borrowed in 1989. Duff read through, it proves to be, an upbringing demand. Had the dogs not taken exception to the strange van parked in the royal grounds, the Queen might never have learnt of the Westminster Travelling Library's weekly